Greetings, hello, and welcome everyone to Age of Mythology Retold. This is going to be a beginner's tutorial, how to get started, the best tips for those of you who are either going to be playing on Xbox or you're going to be on PC using primarily a gamepad as your way to navigate the game. I'm going to show you the basics of Age of Mythology Retold, some things to look out for, and hopefully get you on the better track to learn this game because it's really awesome and it's one of my favorite games of all time. A couple of housekeeping items. There's going to be a playlist for feature guides that I'll be doing, so be sure to check that out. And then lastly, the game key was provided to me by World's Edge for this preview access period. So thanks to World's Edge for supplying that. Let's go ahead and dive in here. When you start into an Age of Mythology game, it also kind of depends on what civ you're playing as. I'm playing as Hades, which is a Greek pantheon civilization. I think that's one of the more easier ones to pick up if you've come from AoE 4 and you like English. I would say that this civilization is more or less kind of that kind of playstyle, the basic civilization in the game. I'll probably do follow-up videos for different pantheons, but I think a lot of what's going to be covered in this will kind of be can be used for those other pantheons as well. What we want to start out is we want to figure out how do we get to the next age, because in age 1 we can't really do a whole lot. In order to get to the next age, you select your town center. You can look, we need 400 food, and we need to build a temple before we can advance to the next stage. So really the priority is getting food and building a temple. We can kind of see nearby when we spawn, we have a few food sources. We have cows, which they actually get more food. They fatten over time. So it's not really in the best interest to go for these right away, in my opinion. You should wait for these to get more food before you gather from them. Over here you have boar, which they do have quite a lot of food, but they will attack you if you attack them. And you need probably a few more villagers to kind of deal with that. We have some chickens over here. Low food counts, but definitely worth going for. We're going to go ahead and, I was going to say we could build a granary, but I don't know if that's really necessary. We'll just go ahead and start getting food here from the chickens. Now, while we're getting that, we want to send our scout to start getting some more line of sight around this map. What is out there? We're going to select the scout, right trigger. We're going to turn on auto scouting. The scout is going to go ahead and discover more of the map. We want to start queuing up villagers. That's the backbone of our economy. However, going back here and queuing up villagers all the time to train takes a lot of time and you can kind of forget. So turn on auto queuing. You right-click on the right stick. You click on the right stick while you have the left stick hovered over the villager. And it'll just train villagers for the rest of time. You do have a limit of 100 villagers that the game tells you about. And we also want to go ahead and start getting some wood. Need a little bit of wood. Reason being is we're going to need to ultimately build houses to extend our population, as well as we need wood for the temple as well. I believe we're also going to need gold. So 2 villagers on wood is fine. Rest of the new villagers can go on gold. We're going to be training villagers for forever so long as we have the population and the food to support it. If you want to kind of make your economy a little bit more efficient, you want to make sure that you're as close to what's called drop-off buildings as possible. So, maybe instead for this for these bushes that the villagers are gathering from, maybe I want to build a granary right here so they don't have to travel as far. When they're traveling to drop off the resources, that's just less amount of time that they're actually working and gathering the said resources. Enough blabbering on. We have enough supplies now to go to the second age. Oh, that's a classical age. I lied to you. I'm in the Archaic age, I believe is what it's called. I'm used to the AoE 4 terms of the age. Nonetheless, we're going to select it. Now, in Age of Mythology, you get to pick between 2 minor gods. The difference between the two is not going to be any sort of difference between the individual units you're going to get out of your barracks and your archery range. The difference is the myth units. Each minor god that you pick gives you a unique myth unit that you can't get from the others. So if I pick Ares, I can get the Cyclops, or if I go with Athena, I can get the Minotaurs as well. Both of them are really, really good. You also get a unique leader power for each one. For Ares, you get Pestilence. You target an enemy town infected with the plague. It prevents buildings from firing projectiles, and it slows down their unit production. That's really good if you want to do a serious raid. You know, there are quite a lot of interesting picks that you can do, and it also caters to your playstyle, and that'll change as you learn what works best for you. For me, for this video, I'm going to go Ares. We're going to go ahead and research that. Jeez, that's a lot of villagers. Let's go ahead and start attacking this boar. Once we age up, you'll notice that we got a free myth unit. Every time you age up, you're going to get one free myth unit from the minor god that you selected. You also get your first leader power. Some of them you might get multiple, like in the Atlantean civs. A lot of them will give you a couple of free rounds of leader powers, like Gaia's Force, for example. You can use that a handful of times, maybe 2 or 3 times. Anyway, if you want to use your leader powers again, you can. AOM Retold has recharging leader powers. You can. It just costs favor, and that's what that number is on the Sentinel power. You can see it now says it costs 50 favor or 50 power to use again. Now we want to start building military buildings now that we're in Age 2. To get to that, select some villagers. While you have the right trigger open, it's going to show you economy buildings first. If you hit Y, it'll take you to military buildings. So we want to open up with probably the good old military academy. I'll put a couple here. You can actually use queue up a couple by holding left trigger while you press A. That allows you to do multiple at one time. We'll have these go over here. We have some villagers just kind of hanging out. I believe the building go to the next stage. I always get it mixed up from AoE 2. It's not a market, it's an armory. So we'll just put an armory there. He's gathering relics. You can do that as soon as you can build hero units, by the way. That's not really something I went over. You can train hero units in your town center. I'll train Ajax here. Hero units are special units that are really good against myth units, but I believe some of them can even, like, rally your troops, get them fired up. I might be wrong on that. But they have this kind of golden aura around them, as if they're like a Super Saiyan. That's what I like to call them, Super Saiyan units. And they can pick up relics. It's different than in AoE 2 and AoE 4, where those produce gold. These give you buffs to your gameplay. Oh, look at that. Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. Joke's on you, nerd. And then you want to take the relic back to your town center, is what you can do there. Now, I believe we have everything we need to age up. We just need 800 food, which we can definitely do. Be mindful, by the way, when you're building, this happened to me on accident during the beta, is in AoE 4, your buildings are not walls, but in Age of Mythology, they are. What I mean by that is, if you really want to, you could build these buildings, like, right on top of each other. See how, like, these two houses are and these two houses kind of are not? And it blocks the pathing. See, the villagers won't walk between those two houses, but they will between these two. So if you're building buildings too close to each other, you could get your villagers stuck somewhere. It's also kind of a strategy, too, where some people will build their buildings as if it's a wall to direct the pathing of enemy units when they attack. One of our beta games, if you check on the channel, actually, an opponent did do that. And I would consider that more of a higher level strategy. But nonetheless, it is available to you as you progress through the game. So I think it's a risk-reward. The risk is you can lose all your buildings very quickly when they're all right next to each other. But the reward is you can block someone's pathing or slow down their army, whatever the case is. You also want to make sure that, in my opinion, building more production buildings is more beneficial to you than not. In my opinion, there's really no downside. It just costs more wood resources and more room in your base to do. Reason being is if you only have one archery range, you can only produce one archer at a time. Whereas if you have, say, 6 archery ranges, you can produce 6 archers at a time. It may not seem like much, but that can be a dramatic difference in building your army back up, sending reinforcements to the field, whatever the case is, it ends up working so well in your favor to produce at least, I like to do the bare minimum of 2, and as I get more resources, which I have an absolute ton, I probably should have, honestly, like 5 or 6 of each at this point. Just given my resources kind of allows me to do that. It works so well for my military. I like putting them closer together because they're easier to select. If you want to find out, well, now I have 6 archery ranges. How do I select all of them at the same time? There's a couple of ways you can do that. First is double tap A on an archery range. It will select all of them, almost all of them on the screen. I think sometimes it goes just slightly off screen as well. But that's how you can select all of them. Hold the right trigger down. Now, I have 2 built. So if I produce 2 archers, you'll see this gold bar. That's it training there, the 2 archers. And then if I press A for a rally point, they're going to go to that rally point. I selected that a little bit too late. If you want to make it even easier for yourself and say, I just don't want to double tap A all the time on these archery ranges, or what happens if I'm in battle and I need to select my archery ranges from a distance, you can make these what's called a control group. So we'll select the archery ranges. Looking elsewhere, like slightly off, I'm going to hold both the right trigger and the left trigger at the same time. This radial is going to come up, and these are my control groups. I press X, and I've created a control group here for those archery ranges. Now, I can look, say, all the way over here, press and hold both triggers again. There's that 6 archery ranges and control group run. Press A, and now I have all 6 archery ranges selected. I can open that with the right trigger. If I queue up 6 archers, you'll see that all 6 of them have a gold bar, and I'm training 6 archers, and I think I set my rally point over there. It's still right here. Well, only for those 2. So it's an easier way to kind of select your buildings. Anything can be a control group. A building, a unit, a house. I don't know why you make it a house. I think you can even mix and match. I don't know if you can mix and match units or buildings, but you can mix and match buildings as well. All right, now that we're we're really soaring. Our opponent really hasn't attacked us at all this entire game. I did put them on the standard difficulty. We're ready to attack. Let's go ahead and send the units that we do have. Again, I can select all my military by holding left on the D-pad. There's a difference between regular moving and attack moving. I want to go over very quickly. Regular moving is just pressing A on your controller. They're just going to move to wherever you want them to go. When I get over here, this will be a great example for it. The other kind of moving you can do is what's called attack moving. And there's a big difference between the two. Attack moving means the units are going to go to that point just like you pressed A. However, they're going to attack whatever they see along the way over there. So I can press A and run right by this tower, and we're not going to attack them. However, let's say I want to go right here, press X to attack move, and you can see all the units are attacking this building. Once that building's destroyed, they're still going to move to right there. And there you go. And now they're kind of going to wait where they are. So that's the difference between the two. You can lose your entire army if you do a regular move instead of an attack move when you engage with an opponent. At this point in the game, when you pivot into Age 2 and Age 3, the strategy that you set in motion at the beginning of the game hopefully is coming along well together for you to where you can kind of make sense if what you had set out to do is effective, if you need to pivot into a different strategy. Maybe it's a different unit composition, like maybe spearmen aren't working for you and you need to go to counter infantry. Or maybe you realize your opponent was making way too many archers, so you need to actually make the counter archers of whatever your pantheon or civilization that you picked offers. There's a bit more variety in Age of Mythology compared to, say, Age of Empires 4, Age of Empires 2, in terms of how villagers work, how buildings are built, how all the myth units interact. That's going to be a little bit more complicated if you've never played this game before. However, if you've played on controller those previous games, AoE 2 or AoE 4, the controller is going to feel right at home. Even if you're coming from Halo Wars, it translates very, very well. And I actually think that there are going to be some controller players who are going to be better than some PC players once they kind of figure out how it works for their playstyle and kind of go from there. Last few couple of small pieces of items as we kind of get towards the end of this video. I don't want to drag it on too terribly long. Be mindful of, again, what your opponent is building in terms of their unit comps. Maybe scout your opponent better than I have here. I didn't really see any of his unit comps until just now, so I was kind of unprepared for this attack. Maybe does your opponent have some exposed villagers, maybe on an exterior gold pile outside of his base, so you can get some easy villager kills. Maybe you can see a particular way that you can get some really good map control by utilizing walls or something. That is really kind of up to the dynamics of the game. However, unit upgrades are going to be really, really important. Most RTS games, and this one is really no different. I think they're stunned, and that's why they're not attacking. Is more units generally beats less units, even regardless of upgrades. That's not exclusively true. But let's say, like, your opponent right there, let's say, I don't know what that was, 20 units. If I showed up with 55 units or something, it wouldn't have mattered if he had more upgrades than me. I would have won that battle definitively. So if you're wondering, how should I spend my resources? Because look, upgrading to the heavy ranged soldiers on the right-hand panel there, that's 300 wood, 300 gold. And my economy is absolutely insane at the moment. But if it wasn't, I mean, that's quite a lot. I mean, that's the equivalent of about 6 archers for just the wood and almost 10 times the gold count as well. So you got to think, like, is it worth having more units or getting the upgrade for the units? And that's a decision that you're going to have to make given on how the game is kind of progressing at the very stage where you're asking that question. I know that's not a helpful answer for you, but at least, like, get that question going when you want to make the decision if it's worth upgrading. It's also important to know that getting the actual unit upgrade here, so like upgrading the heavy spearman to the champion spearman, I do know I need to be age 4 to do that, but however, that increases its hit points and attack, so we're increasing its health and attack, whereas if we go to the armory, they're kind of split up. So the armor ability, the armor upgrade here, that's 300 food, 200 gold. That's only going to help our armor. The attack is another 300 food, 300 gold. Whereas this upgrade here is 500 food, 400 gold. So the point I'm trying to get at is upgrading both the hit points and the attack is cheaper than upgrading the hit points and the attack from the armory. Generally speaking, your unit upgrades are going to be more efficient from a resource standpoint than your armory upgrades. It's also important to know that, like, this impacts all human soldiers, right? It's not just the spearmen, whereas that upgrade just does the spearmen. So that is the downside to that. Just be mindful of that if that's kind of the decision that you want to go for your units. I think that's probably a good stopping point. I don't want to overwhelm you too much. Again, scout your opponent. Prioritize the resources that work best for you. If you think that that is going to let the villager preset system work well for you, like let's say you're like, oh, that's too overwhelming, let this run and see how your economy does. The auto queuing of villagers is very important. Make sure that that's always going. Get your economy going. Make sure that you're always checking up on the D-pad for idle villagers. If they're idle, they're not doing anything. In fact, they're just wasting population because they have no job to do. Make sure that they're close to drop-off points where the resources are. You want to make sure that they're making the most efficient trips that they can with the resources that they're gathering. You don't want them walking too long because they're not working. They're just hauling the resources. So the shorter distance they have to walk, the more time they can spend actually working and getting you the resources. Like, have more than one military production building. That includes temples, by the way, so you can train more than one myth unit at a time. I just only have one for the example of this video. Be mindful of your population, which is there on the top panel kind of towards the right. That's that last one on the right. If you're getting close to your population, preemptively build more houses like I have here. If I have a ton of wood laying around, which I did at that point, I built a bunch of houses so I don't have to worry about pop capping myself. Practice makes perfect. Play some skirmish games against the AI. See how you perform. Check out replays from other players. And be open to changing up your strategy and learning more play styles. That makes you more of an effective player. And hopefully you can get some more enjoyment out of the game. Again, as I said earlier, I'm going to be doing more advanced tutorials, and there'll be an Age of Empires guide playlist. This video from Age of Mythology Retold will be in there, and we're going to be covering this game extensively, and we're going to be doing multiplayer matches and all the rest. So if you're interested, be sure to check out the channel for all that content, and that is going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, everybody, and I'll see you, James.